quite an introduction. Kind of builds me up. And, a little embarrassed, but I have been around, and I have made Central New York my home. So I did grow up in the Liverpool area. I went to Bishop Rhymes, studied at Syracuse University. Also, after I graduated from SU in 1990, I realized that I just didn't feel like my education was over. And as it said in the write-up there, I feel like one of the words or phrases that best describe me as a lifelong learner. If I'm not learning, I get bored. So after I graduated with a degree in interior design and worked for quite a while, I went back to school for psychology. And most people think, well, how does psychology and interior design really go together? But I was always fascinated by human behavior and how people interact within a built environment, how you can design something to make it comfortable. You can design something to make it effective or efficient. You can design a healthcare environment to make people recover quicker. So I think that there was always this idea about humans. It's human-centered design is kind of my approach. Years later, after working for quite a while and understanding the business behind design, I decided to get my MBA, also up at SU, and didn't really expect my career to start focusing on teaching, very honestly. So I thought I was going to be an interior designer working maybe at my own firm or for an architectural firm. For years, I actually worked at King & King Architects here in Manlius, right down the street before they moved downtown. But my professors would call me back. Sarah, we know you're in the area. Would you like to come in and interact with our students and tell them about what you're doing professionally as an interior designer so that they have a better vision of how their education can be applied into a career. And so when I was asked by my professors to come back and start teaching, I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. I will tell them from a professional point of view how to start networking for internships, how to connect to get your first job. So I guess my professional practices was always part of what I did. Which eventually led me to this idea of combining design and aging. Because right now I'm always trying to figure out what the trends are within any field. And the growing area for design and architecture is for an older population as we start looking at designing homes that you can live in for your life course, for the entire lifespan, not just until you get to a certain age and you don't want to walk upstairs anymore. How can we design a home that people can live in forever? We started looking at offices as well, as people want to start, maybe they don't want to, or maybe they have to, work longer into life. How can we design corporate offices that support people of all generations? How can we design healthcare environments that are inclusive and safe? So sometimes when we talk about creative aging or designing for an aging population, we really just should say inclusive design, because we're really trying to encompass all people of all abilities. So you'll see that my terminology kind of changes sometimes as I start presenting. And we're just trying to find the right words to make sure we're getting our point across. So that was a little bit about me. So right now I'm teaching and just helped launch a new graduate program called Collaborative Design. And am I talking loud enough? Not louder? Okay.
That microphone should be working.
Okay. All right, just let me know and I'll speak up a little bit. So Collaborative Design is a graduate program, and we just launched it 2 years ago. So we're just kind of working out some of the bugs. And I'll show you some of the things, and I'll talk about some of the projects that we're working on here. So we talk about collaborative design mainly because as an interior designer, I never worked alone. I was always collaborating with somebody else. And any designer will tell you the same thing. I can show you, we're down actually in Armory Square in the old warehouse. Years ago, it used to be a warehouse for Duncan Bright furniture, and I think it was also a place, one of the car dealerships had kept cars there. Now it's, we call it the Nancy Cantor warehouse, named after our chancellor, Nancy Cantor, or former chancellor. And they basically took the entire building and they put all design disciplines in there, which is really nice because now we can get to know the students and the faculty from other programs. So at the top of the warehouse, we have the fashion program. 6th floor is environmental and interior design, which is where I teach mostly. Industrial and interaction design is on the 5th floor, and communications design, which you might know as graphic design or marketing or advertising, is on the 3rd floor. So if you were to talk to any of the designers within this building, they'd tell you that nothing that we do is by ourselves. We're always collaborating with a client. For an interior designer, we're collaborating with architects, engineers, contractors, a wide variety of people.
Excuse me,
Yes.
during this everyday collaborative, do you bill?
Do we bill? So do we bill for our time?
Yeah.
I would say when I was a professional designer, yes.
But not now.
Not now, because I'm teaching full-time. I'm not taking on
Does
any
any of your, but does any of your floors or any of your creative team members or whatever?
Okay, so there are some community outreach projects that we take on, and it's usually for nonprofit organizations, and we don't charge at that point. There are some organizations that will offer a stipend to kind of run a particular project that they have it envisioned, they want to bring it to the students. For example, the Connective Corridor, there was a creek walk project, there was a lot of signage that was done down in Armory Square, and the city of Syracuse brought that to our students to allow them the ability to kind of use their creative problem solving for that particular project. So they did offer some money for materials and research and that sort of thing, but it's not billed out like a regular design project. So there's an opportunity for our students to really benefit from working on real world projects before they get out. They can put that in their portfolios and put that in their resume, on their resumes, and talk about it like a real project during an interview. So there's a huge benefit to something like that. So anyhow, this is our home, the warehouse down in Armory Square. And one of the things that we like to talk about with our grad program is the fact that we take on wicked problems. Has anybody heard the term wicked problems that kind of used lately? And this is kind of a buzzword or phrase that kind of talks about projects that are big and unimaginably big. Where do you start? How do you take on climate change? How do you take on nuclear weapons, drug trafficking, poverty on a global scale? And we actually talk to our students about that. Like, don't be afraid of some of the big fuzzy-ended projects, because with our design methods and our problem-solving methods, we kind of bring together a large group of people to address these things in a multidisciplinary way. So as I mentioned before, as an interior designer, I never work alone. I always bring together a group of people. Any of these projects would also, there could be people in education, people within government, people within our communities that could all sit at a table and have a conversation about any one of these. So obviously, to kind of bring it down to what our students need to study for our curriculum, we talk to them about our wicked problems being issues with accessibility, for example. And that could be accessibility. How do you get into a museum? How do you enter? What is the entry sequence into a library? The shopping mall, that sort of thing. And we talk to them also about other larger issues like preparing food. So when we approach a project for our students, we usually, we don't talk to them in theory or have them read a book about it. We actually bring in people to kind of offer these design opportunities or challenges to our students. So one of the terms up here is preparing food. And you think, well, how is that a wicked problem? Preparing food, everybody does it, you have to eat. But as our students started talking to some of the elders in our community, they realized that some of them were not preparing their own food any longer. They were, let's see if I can get that back. It's a large challenge. So we asked the student to kind of just sit down and have a conversation about why do we think preparing food is a wicked problem. So this woman who volunteered, she was about 85 years old or so, sat down with our student and said, well, if I have to think about preparing food, first I have to think about what do I want to eat. Then I have to make myself a list for the grocery store. Then, she didn't drive any longer. She had to make sure she found a ride to Wegmans. Once she was at Wegmans, she had to do her shopping. So she sent through this list of step by step by step of how she would need to prepare a meal just for herself. After Wegmans, bringing home the groceries, getting the groceries from the car up to her second floor apartment. Once it was there, she had to put it all away. Then, the next day, she would prepare the meal. Then cook it, eat it, clean up after it. And when we listed out all the steps, I think this student happened to be from China, and he was about 22 years old. He was like, oh my goodness, I never really thought through how many steps, how much time and preparation went into just thinking about food and a meal. So he took these ideas and he came up with a variety of different ideas for this particular woman. And she had a family in the area, and she wanted to cook a meal for her family, but it was just an overwhelming job. And she didn't have her grandchildren over very often because of all the steps. So he actually designed a place that you could go to, something like, there used to be a place here in the Fayetteville area where you could prepare your food and they had all the ingredients for you, and that make and take, something like that a few years ago. It's not in business anymore. But anyhow, he created this and designed an environment where you could call up and make a reservation and say, hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm going to bring my grandchildren and a few other people. I'd like to make spaghetti and meatballs, kind of pick one of their menu items. And on that day and time, you could actually go in. They'd have all your ingredients ready for you. You would go into one of their working kitchens, make the meal with your grandchildren, because this particular woman liked to cook with other people and cook for other people. You could go in, have the meal, sit down and eat it, and clean it up if you wanted to, or you could reserve to have somebody just come in and clean up after you. So this woman just thought, oh, that is a fantastic idea, and we never would have had that design opportunity if it wasn't for this one conversation with a particular community member. So that's just an example of our design approach. We don't just hand out a project brief to our students and expect them to start designing. We say we know that there are design opportunities in our community, and let's start talking to people about it. So I have a few other slides to kind of showcase some of that process. Another student took on the idea of a pill bottle and how difficult it can be sometimes to manage your own medicine and remember, did I take my medicine this morning? Obviously there's little pill weekly management systems, those little plastic boxes that you can put your pills in and that sort of thing. But the student and the person that he was talking to dialed back a little bit farther, trying to look at the entire system of medicine, from reading the pill bottles to opening up the pill bottles, organizing it out, and they came up with a variety of different options, mainly larger print and easier to open bottles. And it seems like a pretty simple thing, but for the person that he met with, this was a particular issue. We've even collaborated with the Food Bank of Central New York, and you think, well, how does the food bank relate to an older population? But in this particular situation, the food bank brings their food to food pantries, and most of the people that work in the food pantries that we met with were senior citizens who had a hard time unloading the trucks and bringing big boxes of groceries, especially when there was fresh produce like cabbage and things like that, watermelon. So the design issue for this particular student or group of students, it was a collaborative project, was how to create these pop-up refrigeration units that are only needed certain times of the year, and how to make it easier for people to kind of load and unload the groceries, especially for the volunteers that were working at the food pantry. There was another student project that we worked on. This particular student, she was also from China, so she enjoyed not just getting to work on a design project, but to meet people in our community and learn more about our culture. She was interested in exercise and how to get people to engage more in exercise classes, not just for the benefits physically, but also socially. You know, some of these exercise classes was a great network, a kind of a way for people to meet new friends and to kind of build a social network. As she was meeting the people in this particular exercise class, she had a sign-up sheet, and she was asking them to sign their names and email addresses and regular addresses, just so she can keep in touch with them and send information. And she watched some of the people were having a hard time holding a pen and writing their name. And so she started a question about that. You know, is that an issue too? You know, obviously when we're doing exercise classes, we're thinking about our heart and our lungs and the rest of our body, but do you do exercises for your fingers? And this particular group of seniors did not, within this exercise class, focus on small motor skills. It was all large motor skills. So she developed a ball, kind of a foam ball that had electronic sensors in it that could measure the strength of somebody's hand, and asked the instructor to include different exercises for fingers and hands for dexterity. As she kind of measured from the beginning of the class, weeks later, I think it was a 10 or 12 week class, you know, if her particular design helped people with their finger dexterity by the end, and she actually was successful. It was one of the better projects. So that's an example of some of the things that we do. This was actually a logo that one of our students created for a conference that we were just at down in Ithaca, at Ithaca College on Thursday. We were trying to explain our methods, and this student decided that a table was a good metaphor for what we do. So our idea is, as a collaborative design program, we host the conversation around a table, and each one of the people that we invite around the table is somebody from a different point of view. So for example, if we had a student who's designing something for an exercise class, we would bring in a physical therapist, we would bring in maybe the instructor who actually teaches the class. We might invite in the student as the designer, a doctor who maybe deals with issues for arthritis and joints and that sort of thing. So the idea is the students get used to having many voices around the table and kind of synthesizing and integrating the information in order to make it a rich experience, so that we're designing something that really is needed, that it's not just designed as kind of a theoretical or academic project on a campus without any interaction from the end user. This is kind of a quick graphic to show our design method, to kind of meet with people, to create empathy, so that our students are designing for real people, not for a theoretical group population. We have to, while we're having these conversations, actually define the design problem with our end users. Ideation is about brainstorming and creating, you know, maybe 100 different ideas, knowing that it eventually will kind of come to consensus to kind of bring it down to one idea. So this idea of generating a variety of different options and kind of keeping your mind open in a playful way. Prototyping means that once we kind of work with this group of people, we actually build something to kind of react to. So there are models and mock-ups and prototypes, that sort of thing. And then we bring it out to the people we're designing for, and we say, hey, what do you think? Can you give us a try? We get their feedback, and then we start again. So I have a quick video just to kind of clarify the process a little bit more. See if I can link to it.
In 2011, George Beek and Andrew Skiff met at a farmer's market in
We have to wait for
Syracuse.
this
One was a dairy
commercial.
farmer, one was an onion guy.
Hi there. Have you noticed that the world is full of problems? There are big, hairy problems, like poverty and disease, and small annoyances like misplacing your keys. However, the geniuses at Stanford have come up with a process that will broaden your perspective and help you create better solutions no matter the type of problem. This process is called design thinking, and it's here to change the way you tackle problems. Design thinking encourages people to explore new alternatives, creating options that have not existed before. Design thinking is successful because it focuses on the needs of the user. It's more than just good ergonomics, it's about understanding the context and culture of the stakeholders involved. This understanding is found using direct observation and qualitative data, which produces stories that people can really empathize with. Once the research is conducted, the problem solver is more apt to define what the real problem is. After diagnosing the true problem, it's time to ideate or brainstorm new ideas without the constraints of existing solutions. Because design thinkers learn by doing, these radical ideas are then made into simple prototypes that test possible outcomes. Rapid prototyping speeds up the innovation process because we only learn about the quality of our ideas when we test them in the real world. The process of ideating, prototyping, and testing is repeated early on so that mistakes are quick, cheap, and ultimately lead to success. So, why design thinking? The process provides a method and a unifying language for multidisciplinary collaboration, leading to greater creativity and better solutions faster. Suddenly, the world's problems are simple and manageable with design thinking.
So hopefully that gives you a better idea of how we approach everyone in the program. Thank you. So this is a photo of some of our studios. So even within the classroom, it's not a lecture format where students would sit here and actually listen to me lecture the whole time, which kind of gets a little boring after a while, believe it or not. We actually have them sitting around desks, working in a team on a particular project. So this particular semester, we have students working on wheelchair access to get people out of a second floor or higher with another person. So it wouldn't be an independent emergency exit. It would be a special I guess I'm trying to think of the right word. A special unit that is actually attached to your wheelchair that would allow me, for example, to wheel my mother down the stairs in a safe way. Another group of students is working on a bicycle that's easier to balance and could possibly be used with just one hand if needed. We have another group of students that's working with people from Jawonio School, where they have a dance class for young children with cerebral palsy. They're creating these harness system to help these people, these children stand up taller. We have another group of students here that are working on an intergenerational toy and activity, and the idea was to have grandparents and grandchildren kind of interacting with this toy that kind of spins. There's color and sounds and textures and that sort of thing, and they're trying to find a way, not just for grandparents and grandchildren, but also for like an adult daycare and maybe a children's daycare where maybe they have some programming that's together and they could get people of different generations playing together. So I thought that was a great idea. This is a mantra, nothing about us without us. Has anybody heard of that particular mantra? It's kind of very strongly used in the disability community, people with disabilities, basically saying they don't want designers out there designing anything without their voice. So when we learned about this particular mantra, we kind of adopted it for ourselves. So nothing about us without us just simply means that we would never take on a design project without talking to all the stakeholders involved, the end users, caregivers, family, friends, that sort of thing. This was another project that we took on. Enable is associated with RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, where they design prosthetic hands for children. And the children that they're working with basically said, we want super cool, superhero hands. They came in to talk to us a couple semesters ago, and our students were like, oh, why don't we do that for adults? Why couldn't we do something that's aesthetically pleasing, larger than life? So they kind of took that on. This is kind of an interesting project because the path that we thought we were going to be on, creating prosthetic arms for people that needed maybe a certain particular function, turned out to be, through the research, once they started talking to people, was that it was more about comfort, and the harness system was the reason that they preferred not to use their prosthetic arm. That, and very honestly, this is a collaboration between design students and engineering students, and some of the engineering students didn't really want to change their direction. When they started talking to people about prosthetic hands, they're thinking, oh, let's create something that's really cool and mechanical and think about technology. And when the people were coming to them and saying, you know what, we just really need a better vest or a harness system. So we asked the students to kind of, you know what, we have to listen to what people are saying. So they actually bought fabric, thread, needle, and they started designing this a Velcro type vest that would better hold the harness system for the prosthetic arm. So trying to get 24-year-old men who are in engineering, who want to work on, you know, super cool technology, it wasn't very easy for them to, in the end, start designing with fabric. So we brought in some fashion people. We started talking about what's the most appropriate fabrics to use. There's actually a lot of cabling that needed to go in through this vest, so it was actually a little bit more technical than they thought at first. But it was hard to make that adjustment, where some designers, they want something flashy, they want that really slick picture at the end of what they just designed. And these guys in this particular group were like, all right, I am now a fashion designer. I don't know how that happened. But those are the kinds of things that happen in my class. So we listen. We also talk about collaboration skills and listening skills, hearing skills, those kinds of things. So this is just another picture about collaboration. This is the Aging Studies Institute. So it sounds like if you've been attending these talks, you're very familiar with the Aging Studies Institute. This is the poster that Mr. Kupperman just showed me, and my picture's even on there, but most of these people here are affiliates of the Aging Studies Institute, and that is supported right on main campus. If you ever are on main campus going to any of the football games or basketball games, if you know where Lyman Hall is, it's housed in Lyman Hall. And there's a variety of different topics that are kind of supported by the Aging Studies Institute, and I feel very fortunate that my research interest in design is supported by this huge network of other faculty members on campus that are also studying aging or life course initiatives or lifespan initiatives. As we talked before this presentation, we have to come up with the right terminology to make sure that people know that we're being inclusive, that we're not just looking at one part of the population. This is a picture just to kind of show you Teddy Aiken. He was the director for 26 years of the Museum Studies program at Syracuse University, who's also very interested in what we're doing here in design. And last semester we actually decided to bring our two groups of students together, our classes together. We scheduled our classes at the same time to bring Museum Studies students together with design students. And we were looking at museums specifically and how they're engaging baby boomers and an older population. And because, as we know, the baby boomer population is truly booming. One of the terms that we've used in some of our talks is the silver tsunami, this huge swell of people that are kind of retiring, and statistics show 10,000 baby boomers retire every day, which obviously as designers, this is an opportunity for us to design for a group of people that we've just never been able to design for in this mass before. People are living longer, healthier lives, so what can we do to kind of acknowledge that? And as we've been being told by these statistics that baby boomers in general are kind of a fighting group of people. They're kind of fighting for what they want. They're not just kind of slowly easing into their second act. So what kind of needs do they have that might be different than their parents' generation? So we started looking at that specifically within the museum population, mainly because museums take on quite a few volunteers that are retired. So after retirement, people still feel like they want to give back and do something productive or to give back to society. And museums, as I like to say for myself, that I'm a lifelong learner, one of the characteristics for the baby boomer generation also is that they like to continually learn. They put a high value on education. And as we know, museums are always trying to provide education in an entertainment type environment, so something that people want to come into. So we studied what is the expectation for people after retirement for a museum, and we found that a lot of times people want to spend an entire day. So obviously if you have leisure time and you're actually choosing to go to a museum, you have certain expectations. So the idea, the people that we talked to said, well, it's more than just the exhibits. Obviously, we want to go to a museum to see the exhibits, but we'd like to have lunch. We'd like to go to the gift shop and buy some really interesting things, maybe for Christmas for my grandchildren. We were told that entry sequence, the parking, the transportation to actually get to the museum was a big deal. If it wasn't convenient, some people chose not to go to a museum. Once we got into the museum, we were told, well, you know what, finding the restrooms is a really big deal. They should be right there, right in the main lobby and prominent. I don't want to have to ask somebody to try and find the ladies' room. So we created a list, our best practices list, that included all these types of comments that we heard from surveys and interviews and observations, that sort of thing. We thought at first it was going to be a lot of interior design related things, like lighting or slip resistant flooring and that sort of thing, but we found that most museums that we were visiting actually took that into account already. They were already designing a very accessible interior, safe interior environment, and the comments that we were getting was, we call it beyond compliance. So the comments we were getting were things that people could do that wasn't necessarily regulated, but still could create a really a much better environment to encourage people to come in.
It seems to me that the coding people, the building coding people, have now become immersed in this concern.
Yes.
They understand, they're starting to understand, this is the way it's gotta be, not the way it could be.
Right.
And today, it's a thankful project that they are saying the floors cannot be slippery floors, and the chairs in the entryway, and the bathrooms gotta be with the bars for guys, and
Yeah.
the whole thing, easy to access, lots of room to turn around, get a wheelchair in there, all these aspects that our government has become involved in our daily concerns by the people who design and enforce code.
So it's Americans with Disabilities Act, which was actually put into place 25 years ago. And I guess what we found through our research project that museums in general are doing a really good job, mainly because a lot of their money comes from government sources. And so they need to keep up on some of these regulations. What we were surprised about was that there are still, these are minimum guidelines, that there's still room to even improve these environments, to make them even more inclusive, to encourage more people to come in into museums. So that was kind of interesting. We learned a lot for that particular research project. So I guess at this point, though, I kind of just hit on a few examples of things that, projects that we take on. One of my goals and missions today is to see if anybody in the audience would like to become like a senior advisor to any of our students. If you're open to an hour or two throughout your week to interact with our students, I'd like to meet with you afterwards and take your name and contact information, and we can certainly keep a relationship going. We have 15 students who are in need of asking questions to a particular segment of our population, and we will absolutely love to have you.
Where would you do that, Sarah?
We actually, many of our students have cars, and they do go off-site, but a lot of our advisors are also invited right onto campus. So this particular group of students, the graduate students, meet on campus in Smith Hall, right across from the Shine Center, if you're familiar with campus. Yeah.
See, that's the problem, getting there, locating the place, finding a parking place, dealing with traffic different times of day.
Yep.
So you're asking the seniors to do things that is either dangerous or uncomfortable.
Absolutely. So some people we've talked to, I'm part of a movement for healthy aging, and they actually like to come to campus, but we actually provide transportation to our students off campus as well, because we're finding the same thing in other projects, that we can't just expect everybody to come to us. It's not convenient. Yeah.
And I was thinking that if you were to find the student center, if there's a nice restaurant there, and arrange for parking, because I know my husband had meetings at the engineering building and they arranged for parking.
Yes.
It would solve some of the problems.
So I don't know if you can hear in the back of the room, but arranging for parking, making sure that you're meeting someplace maybe where there's food and you can sit and have a cup of coffee in a comfortable atmosphere. Some of our cafeterias, unfortunately, are kind of loud, so acoustically, we like to try and take our meetings someplace a little bit quieter, but we can make those arrangements. So I guess we would try to do just about anything to support an opportunity to meet, to have our students meet with you. Yeah.
In the Fayetteville Library, they've had Oasis programs there, which is very nice, and then they have a cafe there also, combination of things.
So the comment is the Fayetteville Library has Oasis. Is that it's a group of seniors that get together?
Yeah, 55 and older over in the Telegy building, Carrier Circle there.
In Carrier Circle area. So that would even be so it's still a public place, easier for everybody to get to. We've also asked, some of our projects are house related, so we need to get into somebody's home to see the design of their kitchen. Some seniors don't necessarily want our students in their home, which is perfectly fine. So we could find a third place. So not campus, not somebody's home, but maybe a library or another
Sarah?
public place.
There's going to be a change in administration shortly here. And what would, just for the sake of the 15 or 16 people that are here, say we got a van. And we said, the van is going to be limited, the people that can go are limited by the size of the seating of the van. Some vans can hold 12, some vans can hold 14 people. And say we work that out. Just think about it. Would we be willing to go in a good, decent day?
Not in February.
No, okay, in April or May or sometime. And say, we're gonna go, but this time we're gonna go into the Cantor building, the Cantor warehouse. We're gonna take you through, and we're gonna run a 6-week course of it. Say. And one day we're gonna spend on the 6th floor, one day we're gonna spend on the 5th floor, one day we're gonna spend on the 3rd floor. Think about, would you be interested? And it's gonna cost you $25. It's gonna cost you $50.
Fine.
Well,
Great.
fine.
Okay,
Great.
I'm just throwing the idea out to you now that I hear Sarah chat. And I believe you gotta go to the warehouse. Okay, I think you gotta get your hands on it and see what's going on there. And the students are there. You can bring the students up there with their whole package to here is not that easy to happen. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, is there an interest to do that? Is it a feasibility that will you be willing to do that? Aside from the regular Inform series.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, forget the Inform series, but let me see what the new director has got to say about all this.
And actually,
Craziness.
we could also write grants, if that is an option, if people are even interested, we could write grants in order to maybe buy the van or get gas for the van. or something like
Okay.
that.
We could rent a van.
Okay.
We could rent a van from them. enterprise or something like that.
Well, the big issue is always the transportation to park.
I'm hip,
That's always a key issue.
I'm hip, okay, I understand. I mean, you can rent the van for the day, you can get a car dealer to, or there might be an insurance factor there. Okay, I
Yes.
understand all the complications, but it occurred to me that there's an interest of how this little embryo is gonna spring out to our lives and to our children's lives, into their children's lives.
I've got a question for you.
Sure.
If you've got a, building on Ammon Street, just near the, highway, it's a incubator building. Would you ever be working with any of the people in that incubator building where they're building new and developing new materials, new ideas?
So the question's about the incubator building on Almond Street.
I think it's
and,
on
It's on
we,
Water
within
Street,
our
Almond.
course, there is a component of entrepreneurship. And so if students come up with an idea that they think that after graduation, I want to take this on, there are resources on campus, not just at the incubator, but there's also a Blackstone project, which is another way to find funding and mentorship from business people in the community. So we don't necessarily do that in our course.
No.
Once we identify something,
But
and
it's
it's an opportunity after the class. Then there's also the question of intellectual property. If we're collaborating with people in the community, it's not just a student project, it's not just an SU project, it's actually the people that are part of the team that developed this idea would want to be part of that too. So we're very sensitive to that it wouldn't just be our student going,
Right.
running with the idea, that we're truly bringing this together as a group. Yes, yes.
As a retired rehabilitation counselor, I think this is a great thing to have, but what are your groups made of? Do you have a certain person from each discipline, or you have groups of within a discipline and then you merge if you need help?
So the question is, what kind of people do we bring around the table? And very honestly, it depends on the project that the students take on. So each semester, it's different. So the different projects that I showed you here, some of them came out of the same class. So we have groups of students that decide to kind of go in different directions. And as faculty, we help put them in touch with the right people that kind of are put around these tables. So there's not like one answer to just say, it's kind of, we're giving you a fuzzy answer, and the reason is because each project needs a different group of people. And it's kind of interesting, as we start putting key people around the table, the people around the table introduce us to even more people. So sometimes we have 20 people in a particular project. And some people, maybe it's only 1 or 2 conversations. Other people, it might be a weekly conversation or interaction, getting feedback on our design ideas. So everybody has it's not a set schedule by any means.
Are you working with rehab
Yeah.
at all and doing that?
Yeah. 2 semesters ago, we hosted, or helped to host, co-hosted, the Fit In Network, which is the Fitness Inclusion Network, and that is through Upstate Hospital. And so we had Dr. Ninka Dosa, who's a very prominent doctor that does a lot with therapists and bringing in physical therapists and occupational therapists and that sort of thing. So personally, I'm not an occupational therapist or physical therapist, but we have the networks to bring in the right people for some of these things. Yeah. And which has also led to other, writing papers and presenting papers at conferences, doing the research, and also grant opportunities, interdisciplinary grant opportunities with some of these people as well.
Let me add a little piece of information. You could find me easily through the senior center. We have a dedicated website for the families informed, and there is an email address to get to me, which will land right in my room, right in my computer. If you got any ideas, any drawbacks, any dreams, any aspects to the concept of furthering this story, this project, this mission of visiting and learning and involvement, contact. I think there's an element at the warehouse that want us to come and feed them information. This is the shoes you got for 80-year-old, ain't cutting it, honey, or whatever, yes.
Question for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go on.
Okay, are there places around Fayetteville or Manlius that you think are particularly good design examples or particularly bad design examples, particularly for the aging population? Like a Wegmans or a Tops or the library or the senior center?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that it's easy for me to identify things that don't work, and sometimes it's kind of like negative, and I'd like to say, oh, this is absolutely wonderful. Probably a poor example is like Shopping Town Mall. I know I bring my mother up from Florida about 3 months out of the year. She lives with me, and I kind of try to take her around, and there are certain places that she's pretty much told me that she doesn't want to go any longer, and just from a personal point of view, I think it's about accessibility, parking, how convenient is it, how do you get the entry sequence as we talked before. I used to try to take her to the DeWitt Library, and it wasn't an easy access. Parking is around the back. One of the things that we like to talk about design is that when we're taking on a project, inclusive design should mean that everybody gets to enter the same way, that there's not a back entrance that happens to have a ramp or an elevator or something like that, that everybody should be able to enter in the front door. So I think that was one of the things about Shopping Town Mall. Obviously, there's not a lot going on there any longer when it comes to shopping and that sort of thing. There's a lot of other group activities and exercise classes and things like that. But so I guess that's the first thing that popped to my mind. It was, she couldn't find the ladies' room when she first walked in. If they wanted to go to the ladies' room, it was on a different exit. So a lot of times we didn't know which door to go in, that sort of thing. So one of the things on this list, the best practices list for museums, although it can be applied to just about any market segment, is to make sure that you have a welcoming environment and that things are located and convenient. We call it wayfinding, and wayfinding is more than just signage, restrooms with a big arrow. It's like, what can you put in the core, the main entrance of any building to make it welcoming to all people? And we talked about entry desks or reception desks, restrooms. In the museum area, we also talked about creating a core of services in the same place on every floor. So anybody that might feel disoriented, a lot of times you go into a building, you can't tell which way, north, south, east, and west. But if you had the same location for all restrooms, all elevators, all stairwells, the main core services always in the same place, at least it kind of gives everybody, regardless of your age or ability to move around, kind of a way to kind of orient yourself. You got to know where the core vertical path is. So.
What was the name of that inclusive thing? You said get together or something like that? Getting? It was
With us and without us?
Oh, it was the mantra of nothing
Yeah.
about us without us.
yes.
It's
Nothing about us without us.
nothing about us without us. It comes from
nothing about
people
us
with
without us.
disabilities.
That could be the mantra of this visit project. Could be. I would like to see it happen, personally. I could see a lot of advantages of us learning about what's going on. It might not come about in terms of an idea. Could be, you gotta get a manufacturer to buy into it, you gotta get marketing people to extend it out. It just doesn't happen, bingo dingo. But the visit concept kind of gets to me personally, and I like that, nothing about us without us. Okay, that sings to me anyway.
There's also something that's also kind of interesting. We're trying hard to find ways to interact with people in our community. Is that we're also finding out about baby boomers and an older generation. Is that this idea of lifelong learning and the idea of coming to campus is kind of interesting. I know Syracuse University is trying really hard in the summers when most of our students leave and go home. what else can we host on campus that could bring in other people? And we did a little bit of research to kind of understand, you know, are there programs, continuing education type courses where seniors come in and actually live in the dormitories and eat in the cafeteria and go to class. Don Carr, who was actually supposed to be here with me today to talk about our program, about 5 years ago, excuse me, we had the opportunity to go to China, and we participated in a workshop for learning about an older generation. You know, what did they need to know in China that our students could kind of do some problem solving and that sort of thing. And they took us on a tour, a study tour first, of Hong Kong and the Pearl River Delta area, and they brought us into these senior universities. And it was like a regular educational building. And each classroom we went into, there were about 40 to 50 senior citizens learning about a particular topic. So they'd sign up for a course on photography, or they signed up for a course on nutrition. They signed up for courses in ballroom dancing. That was one of my favorite ones that we got to watch. And you realize that there's these, so much left to learn, you know, that it doesn't have to only be for people that are 18 to 24 years old, that our campuses could really reach out to people of all generations. And I do have an aunt that plays pickleball. I don't know if you've ever heard of I had never heard of pickleball before she introduced me to it. She's 75 years old, and it's a competitive sport, and she does the senior games and that sort of thing. I think she even won silver last year. So it was at Cortland, the particular year she was talking about, and she had an option to live in the dorms and actually experience college again, and she just absolutely loved it. She did complain about the showers that were a little too cold. I guess you couldn't really regulate that, but it's kind of fun. Yes?
The Elder Hostel program, which is now part of the Rhodes Scholar program, has been doing that for 50 years.
Oh, really?
I mean, my
Here in
husband
Syracuse?
and I probably went on 30 Elder Hostel programs on college campuses. It would be during the downtime.
Yeah.
Frequently, their professors would teach it, or outside experts. The topics would vary, the subject matter. You had a variety of courses. You lived in the dorm, you ate in the cafeteria.
Did you like it?
Oh, that's why we went on about 40. Yes, but I'm just saying,
Makes you feel young.
it isn't new. I
haven't
think
seen
it has shifted away from college campuses because old people want fancier accommodations. But it would be at conference centers, college campuses, sometimes a hotel.
Yeah.
So
It
it
sounds
varies.
nice. I wish Syracuse University would participate in some of those things.
Yeah. OCC has, for seniors, they can sit in on classes for free, and the parking is there, so it's very convenient. And not a lot of people take advantage of that. But it would be nice if Syracuse could arrange something like that, because, again, seniors are gonna want someplace where they can pull in and park and not have to run around Marshall Street and all that. And, to pay Syracuse University tuition costs, that becomes an issue for a lot of seniors. And I think if you keep it at that level, you're only going to get your upper middle class white population, which is not a cross-section of the culture, which would make the classes more interesting.
That's right. That's kind of interesting. We're part of this grant opportunity movement for healthy aging, where we're trying very hard to bring diversity into the classes. It's a memoir writing class, and it's an exercise class. And we found that as we're going into the near west side and we're trying to get some of the seniors, when we ask their name, they'll usually sign up, but once they find out that they need to give an address or a phone number, they're a little bit more hesitant. There's certain parts of our population, our local population, that just are still not comfortable participating in some of those things. So it's kind of interesting. We're encouraging diversity, but we're trying to figure out how to do it. Yes?
So is ergonomics a huge part of collaborative design? Because my daughter majored in something that I had never heard of called ergonomics, and she helped design, she went into a hospital to help figure out better ways for people to be able to find their way around the hospital as one of her projects, and so it sounds very much like some of the things you're describing?
So ergonomics is definitely part of what we talk about in the classroom. And for example, the museum project that we did, one of the things that came up in our research was that more seating is required throughout a museum so that somebody can kind of move a certain distance before they wanted to have another seat. So ergonomics in this example came up when we were talking about what type of seating was appropriate, and for an older population, it usually has to have arms on it and a weighted base. And so some of the seniors were kind of talking about the way they get out of a chair by kind of rocking themselves up and kind of pushing up off the arms. Some other seniors said that they would rather have kind of a taller stool that you can just kind of lean against versus sitting all the way down into a soft cushion wasn't a good idea. So we do have those conversations and we have resources to go to, but once again, it's specific to each project that we take on. But that's good. So is she still doing that? Is she still in ergonomics?
This is very interesting. I think it was a new discipline. It was at Cornell at the time. It's quite some years ago. And she had a fantastic average, and she had not one interview with someone that could use her skills.
Right.
Oh.
But not, I mean, shortly after, it became much more popular, I think. I don't know what happened.
The
She got
best
interviews for
example
other
of
things.
ergonomics is your automobile.
Yes, definitely.
You cannot, the dial is here, this dial is here, the FM dial is here, the heating is next, the fan is next to the temperature thing, and how you look at it, how they changed it so you can see the GPS and all these other things about the car, where the mirrors are situated, and where you could change the view of the mirror hydraulically on the dashboard, or whatever. That's all ergonomics.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In our car, we have this reflecting the silver right on the dashboard, and when the sun hits it, my husband can't stand driving that car, so we ended up getting a material and actually gluing it over it so it wouldn't reflect into his eyes. That's ergonomics. Somebody designed that very poorly. He even called them up. Hasn't anybody else complained about that? Interesting, yeah.
What type of businesses do these students gravitate towards after they graduate?
So-
Like office design, like what you mentioned, you work for Steelcase, or?
So the question is, where do the students go after they graduate? The Collaborative Design Program is a new program. So I'm the interior design component. The other person I work with is industrial design. We're collaborating with an engineer as well. So the students actually come to us with already having an undergraduate degree, and usually most of them have worked for a few years. So I would say most of them right now that are attracted to our program are industrial designers. But there are some engineers as well. We've had writers. We call it an interdisciplinary program because we look at people regardless of their experience before, working or educational experience. So moving on forward, most of our students are looking for design type firms that specialize in collaborative methods. So maybe even not necessarily for a particular population, but using design thinking methods, kind of group and collaborative research that's done first. So there's places like Continuum, which is out in the Boston area, also a Syracuse alum that owns Continuum, and they do research and then design. They kind of finish up, they do the design process. Sometimes they actually hand off the design ideas. They just do the research and then somebody else actually implements them. So they might collaborate with an architectural firm to implement some of those things. So yeah, that's a good question. So what do you do with something like that? It all sounds really great, but you want to make sure after spending the tuition dollars that the students have some place to go afterwards. We have another student that's actually working on campus with our Office of Disabilities, making sure that our campus is fully accessible. So she found a job at Syracuse University. So it's
So
kind
she's
of,
on their payroll.
yeah, well, now she is.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. When I was in graduate school and going for my rehab degree, the Office of Disability was on the 3rd floor of a non-elevated building.
Oh.
And they said, well, there's a phone, you can call us and we'll come down and talk to you.
Oh my goodness.
And we used to have such angst on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
The old buildings.
Yeah, the old, exactly.
I was thinking while you were talking of the Metropolitan Museum of Art,
Mhm.
they've got the humongous, magnificent foyer with 2 cloakrooms. No ladies' room around.
I know. And actually,
And they're-
so the Museum of Modern Art, they actually have programs to bring seniors in, and they have Alzheimer type
Programs.
programming, which is absolutely fascinating. It's people with Alzheimer's and their caregivers kind of come in and they walk around, and they have videos on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but so they're definitely welcoming in an older population, but the design of the museum itself doesn't
Well, it
necessarily.
also
look
grew from a
like that.
small museum that has become
Right.
added on to and added on to on property that they bought and made do.
Right. Which many of our hospitals are the same way.
The same thing, and
I go up to, well, it was Community General, Upstate Hospital, Eden Park, and they've added on so many times, I don't know where to go half the time. It's very confusing, you know, talk about wayfinding and orientation.
I think the only way you could do it is to label them A, B, C, D, E corridors.
And the way to start is if you have unlimited funds to start all over again,
Right.
which would be, you may-
Well, you can't afford it.
oh, of course, but unless you need that word, unlimited funds.
Did somebody else have their hand up over
I just wondered, have you had any interaction with the New DeWitt Library? I mean, it seems like you could offer some pretty, and it may be too late now.
Well-
You know, they're building that new library on Jamesville Road.
On Jamesville Road, the New DeWitt Library, actually, some of the adjunct professors that we bring in are also architects and designers at King & King Architects, which is the firm that is designing it. So personally, I don't have any interaction, but Syracuse University does have a voice in some of the design.
I can't imagine them not. I
Right.
can't imagine the people who have, what do we say, there's a word expression called the balabast. It means, translated, it means household leader. Right, Rita? Basically, right? Or that's, what would, balabast.
Yes.
And the balabast at the DeWitt Library, who are the leaders and the people who are doing the thinking, I can't imagine them not calling up an architectural firm, and the architectural firm having interior designers and having a relationship with Syracuse University. I just can't imagine it not happening.
So, I don't know, if,
You like that word, balabast?
I'm learning all sorts of words here today. Are there any major issues that you can think of that maybe our students, I kind of gave you a few examples, but things that you think that our students really should be focusing on? Maybe parking, I keep hearing parking is a
The
big.
design of chairs for older people, I'm telling you, having my behind up below my knees is a pain in the knees, whatever it is. I mean, in order for me to get up today, and if my tailbone is below my knees, I gotta have arms to get myself up.
So, all right, we'll put chair design on our list.
The chairs are too deep in many cases.
And I want refrigerators that are off the ground this far.
Well, there were refrigerators
With
10
drawers.
years ago that could be built in at counter height and up
Yeah.
in the kitchens, but they're much smaller.
That's right.
I think a big thing is teaching people to be their own advocates and speaking up when they need something
Mhm.
and telling somebody. Sometimes, most of the time it falls on deaf ears. But if you're in a building and there's something wrong like bathrooms, I mean, the Civic Center eventually added women's bathrooms because people were out the doors.
Right.
So, you know, if you, squeaky wheels always work.
So this idea of, sometimes we just say environmental design when we're talking about
Staircases.
creating a voice for a group of people. It could be a website or it could be an actual physical site of bringing people together to be advocates for themselves and the environment.
Should start a kindergarten.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.